Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to a Friday edition of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo. Your space, your time, your game. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for checking in, whether you're watching, listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate y'all very, very much. We're going to talk plenty of Buffalo Bills today, a little bit of Sabres as well. And joining me right now, someone who's becoming one of my favorite recurring guests at this point, a go-to guy. We were talking for a few minutes here before we got on camera, kind of like my key utility guy to the bullpen. He can pitch some high leverage innings when he needs to. He could come in and get a save in the ninth inning if I need him to. My man PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective. How you doing, buddy? What's up?
Not bad, not bad. I did see a picture on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. You're getting a patio. So I got a question for you because I've been doing a project at my house. How many projects do you do around the house where you get in the middle of it and just go, what the hell did I get myself into? I don't want to do this anymore, but you're kind of stuck having to finish it.
Ha! That is a great question. Let me preface it by saying this too. The house that I live in, and it is a house. I actually don't own this. I rent this. So the project is not mine. The project is my landlord's. It's his money. It's his problem. Long story short, we have a deck in the back, and we have a very nice rental here. We live in West Seneca. Nice place, nice front yard, nice backyard. But the deck quite literally has become like an eyesore. It's old. It was like sticking out with pieces of wood. And there's a hot tub in there, PK. Okay. You'd be like, oh, you got a hot tub. Well, here's the deal. All right. So I've lived here now for 3.5 years. Since I moved back from Florida in the summer of 2021, I lived in this house. Funny thing, quick story here. Before that, 2009-ish or 11-ish to like 2015, I also lived here. I lived here for like 4 years. Then we moved to Florida, kept a good relationship with the landlord. And as fate would have it, when we knew we were coming back to Buffalo, this place just happened to be available. So we jumped back in. Anyway, my whole point is this, man. The hot tub didn't work the first time we lived here, which is going back now like 15 years. Complete eyesore. So I've been on this landlord he's a good guy, in case he's watching or listening to this. But I've been on him starting last year. I was like, come on, man. As much as I like entertaining people, I don't go out to bars that much anymore. I'm old, man. And I either go to hang out at a buddy's house or have some buddies come here, play some poker or just hang out, whatever, shoot the shit. And the backyard, I just don't like having people over in the backyard because the deck just sucked. So to your point, I tweeted it out. I'm not going to throw it up here on the show in the video, but yeah, my deck today's like demolition day. I'll say this, if it was my project, it probably would be sitting there till 2025 or 2026 because there's smaller projects that I do around the house that I start and kind of like don't finish. I have a feeling that you're asking me because that's something that you're guilty of.
Oh yeah. Like during COVID, we redid the bathroom. Never redid a bathroom before, never tiled before. And my wife's got different pictures of me just sitting in the bathtub, just going, I don't know what the hell I'm into. But the newest project, we got a hall closet and I kind of demolished it like 3 months ago. And all the excess stuff's just been sitting in the foster room. And over the weekend, my wife's like, what are your thoughts about turning this foster room into like a guest bedroom now that we got a foster that's been with us for like 10 months and it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime quicker that he's going to be finding his forever home.
Right.
I was like, yeah, that's a good idea, but I got to get this project done and this project done. So I like before then I've been painting. So I got paint all over my hands, but yeah, I'm slowly trying to get these projects. I'm the one that I love demo. I love getting the demo done, getting a fresh, clean slate. It's the rebuild that I can't stand. And my one buddy's a carpenter, and he's really good with his hands on, and just he can build anything. I don't have that trait. I'm a trial and error and a trial and fail until I get it going. But the rebuild is the thing that takes forever. So this closet thing, even though it's not a huge project, it's been taking me months just because I did the demo. Demo is the ice and easy. It's the redesign and the rebuild that I don't have the eye for it. I don't have the patience for it. And I just don't like doing that part of the rehab of different projects around the house.
Look, I got to be honest with you, man. I don't work well with my hands. I am not much of a blue collar type guy. And I know I'm making fun of myself here. If I get a project done, like say if it's a patio or it's something significant in the house, it's because I was able to save up enough money that I got someone else doing the work. You're coming to my house to do the work because I just don't have that skill, that patience, or maybe even that work ethic to do those type of things around the house. But anyway, they're putting the deck got knocked down, and we're gonna have a nice concrete patio, a little easier to maintain too. And I'm perfectly happy, with that as well. So excited about that. Here's what I want to do. The Sabres have made a bunch of moves actually since we've talked last. I haven't had a chance to really talk to you about where you stand with this team, how they're what you think of these moves, where you think they're at. We will do that a little bit later in the show. The primary premise of today, I kind of feel like my shows, and doing these like every day during the week, you got to play both sides of the fence. You have no choice. Some episodes I'm like, well, this is going to be a really upbeat. If you're a Bills fan, you're going to feel really good about this team type episode. Then there's other episodes where it's like, you know what? I'm starting to feel like too much of a homer, too much of a fan here. I'm only talking about the good things. So kind of pound them a little bit. And now it's like, dude's a hater. If you're a Bills fan, you might be a little more pessimistic after listening or watching to this episode. This episode today, it's Fun Friday. So it's going to kind of lean more towards the former. This is going to be more upbeat one. I kind of come up with a list of 6 things that I think bode well for the Buffalo Bills going into this 2024 season. 6 talking points where I want to get your thoughts from them as well. There's more than 6. I'm not saying there's only 6 things that bode well for the Buffalo Bills. There's a lot more. But for me personally, and we'll find out how much you agree on these, is I come up with 6. And I want to start with what I think might be the biggest one, albeit I will admit the corniest one too, the cheesiest one to say. When you say this, I admit it. It sounds rather cheesy, rather corny. And that's simply this, dude. Josh Allen, I think, is going to be on a mission this year. Not that he hasn't been on a mission in previous years. Not that he hasn't felt like he's got a lot to prove. Not that he hasn't wanted to win. Not that he hasn't been hungry. Not that he hasn't been a gamer. I just think this year, for a lot of reasons, is going to be elevated. He knows the clock is ticking in what we'll call the best prime years of his career. He's not old, but he also ain't young, man. He's going to year 7 now, okay? I think there's going to be a lot of doubt. There are a lot of doubters out there, mainly from a national perspective right now. The whole Bills Super Bowl window shut, and a lot has to do with Stefon Diggs leaving. I think he wants to prove the doubters wrong, who may think that Stefon Diggs had more to do with making Josh Allen great than maybe Josh Allen had to do, with making Stefon Diggs great. And I think with Stefon Diggs gone, a lot of these other leaders gone too, which we'll be talking about here in a few minutes. I think he takes on more of a leadership role on this team than he already had, a bigger voice than ever before. And he's also, like I say, he's just a massive ass competitor who's really hungry, and I'm sure frustrated that he hasn't gotten farther than they have to this point. So I'll let you take this away. But point 1, again, cheesy, sure, but I mean it. Josh Allen is really going to be on a mission this year.
Yeah, I mean, 28 years old. I think him and everybody else knows there's going to come a point in his career that he can't be balls to the wall playing his style of football forever. And the time is ticking. Like you said, he's going into his 7th year already. That time's probably closer than a lot of people want to admit that it is. I think for every sports athlete out there, and my highest level was high school. So don't think I'm comparing myself to them whatsoever. But I feel like no matter how tuned out to the mainstream media you are, there's at least a tad bit that you're hearing all the conversations out there. He's hearing the people that would rather start a franchise with Joe Burrow, with Lamar Jackson, with name however many else you want there. They're watching this talking heads on ESPN that Josh Allen's name's even not even mentioned because they can't get out of the divisional round. And for some reason, all that is on Josh Allen, the reason that they can't get out of it. I think he hears all that chatter. It's impossible not to hear it. I really think because of the type of athlete he is, you just see the not cockiness, but the, hey, I'm this good on the football field. I think he truly wants to be that one that brings that Super Bowl to Buffalo. And he's already going to go down as one of the best. If he's going to go down as the best quarterback, possibly the best Buffalo Bill of all time. But if he brings that trophy to Buffalo, he's going to be treated like a god. He's going to be treated like a king in Buffalo, even more than he already is. So I think that alone, with everything else that the community has done for him, I think that's what he wants to do to give back. And I know a lot of athletes say, hey, I want to do this for the city. I think since this is the Positive Friday and Fun Friday, I really do think that Josh Allen truly means what he says when he wants to bring that to Buffalo for the community and for everybody here in Western New York. I think everything you said, that he wants to prove all the doubters wrong, that it's not just Diggs that made him. It's that he also helped make Diggs the type of player that he is. And now that he's out the door and he's got to take that leadership role, I think you're going to see a different style of Josh Allen football than maybe you haven't seen yet.
When you become a star on the level that Josh Allen has become a star on, and I'm going way beyond Buffalo here, folks. I'm talking about like the world, the country. Being on the cover of Madden last year. Every time you do anything, it's out there. You play golf, it's out there. You date a Hollywood or a Hollywood celebrity, which he is, it's out there. Photos of him with this girl in France and New York City and you name it. And people who, quite frankly, I think are idiots will doubt his dedication, his desire to stay in shape, his desire to work as hard, which he is working hard. He just doesn't post videos on Instagram every single time that he works out like other people. Do you think he kind of gets like a little bit of a bum rap just because of the level of his stardom? And maybe you don't, at least publicly, you don't see him putting in the work during the off season, even though he is. But, everyone handles their off season and gets their body right in a different way. But you got to feel like he gets a bum rap when it comes to that shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also has to do with he just hasn't, and the team hasn't won that ultimate prize yet. And you do hear a bit of it with Travis Kelce. You do hear a bit of it with Patrick Mahomes, but not to the extent that you might hear it with a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow or any of the other star-studded quarterbacks or players that haven't truly won it yet. They'll use every excuse in the book, like, oh, he's traveling in France, he doesn't care about this, he'd rather spend time on the golf course. That was what it was last year, where he'd rather be on the golf course rather than training. But yeah, just because you're not posting it doesn't mean you're not doing it. I think somebody just posted that he had all the pass catchers wherever they were, and he was working out with all of them the other day. It's out there, you're just not seeing it because none of the guys are posting it on social media.
So, and another thing about Josh Allen too is, and look, man, the dude he's not without flaws. He has had some terrible games in the regular season. I've said it many times, he was lousy, and that's being generous, in the Cincinnati divisional round playoff loss 2 years ago. So he's had some stinkers. There's no question about it. He's not without flaw. That said, I think part of the reason why maybe nationally he might get some of that, he's not really a top 3 quarterback, which I just don't buy how you can't call him a top 3 quarterback. But I have seen him on lists where he's 6, 7, 8, stuff like that. It's ridiculous. The guy is because he has not gotten into a Super Bowl yet. But you go back to 2021. What more can you do? What more could Josh Allen have done to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in 2021? Last year was not a perfect game at home against a very, very, very good Kansas City Chiefs defense. A defense that was the reason why the Chiefs were even in the playoffs, let alone won the Super Bowl last year. They should have won the game. The defense let them down. The defense has let him down. His receivers dropping passes. have let him down. And to his credit, he'll throw nobody under the bus. You know what I mean? But I kind of feel like the fact that the Bills as a team haven't been to a Super Bowl yet, that kind of is the one thing right now where if there are still a couple people hanging on to the fact that Josh Allen is overrated and he's not that good and he don't care enough, that's it. That they got to get to a Super Bowl. And I know that's kind of putting a lot on his shoulders, but his shoulders are big and strong and sturdy, and he's got to be able to bear that, because at the end of the day, they do got to get to Super Bowl. But other guys got to be better around him, mainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's that low-hanging fruit. It's that easy article to write about where it'll get you the clicks if you're putting Josh Allen 5, 6, 7 on a quarterback list. It's going to drive up your viewership. It's going to drive up your clicks. And I think that's why a lot of people do it, because it's so easy to write an article like that until they actually make a Super Bowl or until they actually win it. They're going to keep writing about it, and they're going to keep doing it because it's going to keep generating those clicks.
Quick little sidebar before we get to the next point, because it's on my mind. It's been on my mind a lot. If you are starting a franchise right now in the NFL, you're taking Patrick Mahomes. It's got to be Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's got, but maybe not. Maybe he does have better support around him to succeed over the last 5 years, between the head coach, the greatest tight end arguably who's ever played the game, a great receiver for at least one of those Super Bowls. Anyway, whole point is this: you're taking goddamn Pat Mahomes. How are you not taking Josh Allen second? I will only listen to Joe Burrow as the argument, because Joe Burrow's been in the league for 4 years. He's been healthy fully for 2 of them, and they've been to the Super Bowl and the AFC title game both those years. The other 2 years, he was hurt. But that's the thing. Dude, he's been hurt 2 of his last 4 years. Anyone else, I ain't trying to hear it. I don't want to hear Lamar Jackson and his 2 MVPs. Dude is stunk in the playoffs. Dak Prescott and Tua are regular season stat fillers who don't do shit when it matters. Aaron Rodgers, old as hell. There might be some quarterbacks on the come up. Maybe you have this conversation at some point, but right now, how do you go with anyone else besides Pat Mahomes over Josh Allen?
Yeah, I think there's a tier 1, and then right below that, there's a tier 2, and both of those tiers have one quarterback and one player in them. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes, because he continues to win. Yes, he's got one of the best coaches of all time coaching him, and he's got, like you said, one of the best tight ends of all time, if not the best. Number 2, alone in tier 2, is Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen still has the ability and the capability to get into tier 1. It's just he's got to get over that last hump of beating Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Maybe we should take a quick break right now and go into our closets and look for some Josh Allen jerseys and throw them on right now. Because if you're not a Bills fan, a Bills homer right now, you're listening or watching this, and you're probably ready to throw up all over yourself right now, hearing us rave about Josh. But seriously, I do think that his, like I said, I know it's cheesy, but him being on a mission this year, I think that's a big, big point. One more, and then we'll get to a break too. And by the way, 4 of these are Bills related, and 2 of them, where I say 6 factors that bode well for the Bills, 2 of them actually aren't necessarily Buffalo Bills related, but this one definitely is. And that's the departures. So much is being made about how much they've lost of their core. I've talked about a lot on this show. I know you have as well. Buffalo Sports Collective, everybody has. But it can bode well if you realize that the departures are more about who those players that they lost are now. Who they are now in 2024, not who they were, not how you remember them as Buffalo Bills, but how they are as football players now. I'm talking about Jordan Poyer. I'm talking about Mike Hyde. I'm talking about Trey White. I'm talking about Mitch Morse. Lesser scale, I'm even talking a little bit about Leonard Floyd and maybe even Gabe Davis. Because look, Jordan Poyer's not the same safety he was 3 years ago. Micah Hyde might not even play again. He was not that good last year. Trey White, I love Trey, man. 2 major injuries. What do you got left from him at this point? Mitch Morse, great leader, good center. I still think he's pretty good. I'm not too happy that they cut him, but I see why they did. He's old, he was expensive, and I think schematically they're going to be doing some things in the offensive line. Leonard Floyd, 10.5 sacks. He had 1 sack in his last 8 games last year. And then Gabe Davis, Gabe Davis is the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of him at this point. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, you think of these players of who they were and not necessarily what they are now. And I think that maybe what they have now, in some cases at least, might be a straight up upgrade.
Yeah, I I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Poyer has lost a step. He's going to be down in Miami just because he lives there and they wanted to give him a contract. No, these are no shots against them whatsoever. This is just the point in their career they are. Micah Hyde might be forced to retire because of the neck injury. Trey White, like you said, the two major injuries, he's never reclaimed what he was. He was solid, but he was never that true all-pro player again. Gabe Davis never recaptured that 13-second game. I don't think you get the leadership that you got in the DB room that you had with those veterans there. It's impossible because of how long they were there. But you could argue that they're deeper now. You could argue that they got faster. You could argue that they definitely got younger. But the only question mark of all those names you put, and I think you already mentioned it, was Mitch Morris. That was the biggest question mark, but I think they did it because of the money. But you move McGovern over to hold that spot until Van Pran Granger starts cooking behind him. Sure. I love that. But they were incredible players for their time here. But at the end of the day, the main goal is to win a Super Bowl. And that group came up short. Now, this next wave of players is going to look to build upon what the previous regime built to try to finish that end goal. I think if you're looking at the players that got subtracted, and we could talk about when the Sabres come up, I think it's addition by subtraction for this, because yes, they lost a step, and yes, you're going to have all those memories of them, but you got to look forward. You can't be just keep continuing to look in the past of what they did and how they broke the drought and all those other things. I think if you look at the core that's there now, I truly believe that by the end of this season, you could see that position as one of their strengths, as opposed to, some of these older guys that did lose a step and trying to replace them with the DeMar Hamlins, the Jaquan Johnsons from a few years ago, and so on and so forth. But I believe that because I think if you take off your fandom hat and your biased hat and actually look at it from a football perspective, I do think by the end of the season, they got better at those positions.
I agree 100%. We're going to take a quick break, come back on the other side. We're actually going to talk about that ascending youth right now that I think bodes very well for the Buffalo Bills. All right, I am back with PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective. We are going over 6 factors that I think, and so far PK thinks as well, definitely will bode well for the Buffalo Bills going into this 2024 season. All right, so before the break, we talked about some really, in some cases, all-timers on this football team, core players that they're not here no more, and they're just because they're not simply the same players that they once were. So kind of on to that next point, connecting that, I think ascending youth with the Buffalo Bills is very much on the rise. So you want to talk about guys like Poyer and Hyde and them. They've been good for a long time, but they weren't really, they didn't have a lot of ascending talent. I think they do now. I like Khalil Shakir a lot. James Cook, Dalton Kincaid. Osiris Torrance played every game last year, starting as a rookie at guard. Christian Benford, a great season at corner. Terrell Bernard. I mean, dude went from somebody that I can't believe was a starting middle linebacker in the NFL to somebody like, oh my God, I can't believe he's not playing against the Chiefs. This is the goddamn worst. Everyone I just mentioned, dude, 3 years or less experience right now. And that's not to mention rookies. Now, 2 of them, at least I would expect that are going to play on some levels really early on. Keon Coleman, which, by the way, if you're seeing some of these training videos on social media, dude is putting in work. It looks like he became a better route runner in like 2 months. Anyway, him, Cole Bishop, or even guys like Greg Rizzo, Spencer Brown, they're still playing under their first contract. You can argue this might be the most important thing right now that might bode well for the Buffalo Bills. That ascending youth that they have, to me, very much on the rise.
Yeah, I mean, it's at key positions as well. I mean, pass catchers are massive, especially on this offensive side of the ball where there's positions to grab where I don't think anybody's locked in besides maybe a Curtis Samuel for like locked in on what your role on that offense is going to look like. You got Khalil Shakir. Yes, he looked fantastic at the end of the last year, or the back half of last year. But can he bring that towards this year? Can Kincaid take that next step? Can James Cook be a better pass catcher? Those roles are still up there for them to grab. And I think there's a next step for each one of those players. This is the next wave, though. Like, this is what we were just talking about, where the old regime left. And this is the new wave that's coming in here.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. How many of these players are still on their rookie deals? Even Gregory Rousseau and Spencer Brown, they're going to be looking for a new deal to come next year. But they might not be the household names outside of Buffalo, but they will and they should make meaningful impacts this year. I'll even toss out another name that I think is going to be big if there's more injuries in the linebacking core, especially with Matt Milano getting older. They're going to be 29, I believe it is. Dorian Williams. I was so high on him last year, and I think he made some plays in that final playoff game. He was very, very rough in the regular season. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I think he has a long way to go, but he's too big of a freak athlete to not make some type of impact on this team being coached by Sean McDermott. I think, can these young guys grow and build this thing together? I think they can. And there's a lot more time on their sides. Like, Kincaid's only entering his second year. He's got at least 3 more years. If they pick up the 5th year option, 4 more years. Cook's just going into 3. Shakir's going into 3. Torrance is going into year 2. They can continue to grow this new wave of youth and try to be that next stepping stone that the previous regime tried to build, and they can continue to do that, and maybe they can get them over that hump and into the Super Bowl.
Dude, I like where you're going with Dorian Williams, by the way. I like him, man. He is an athlete, and you could see physically that he's there. It was the mental mistakes, the forgetful assignments, I'm sure, a couple missed tackles, I'm sure, made some mistakes, and kind of got into Sean McDermott's doghouse and never really got his whole body out of it. A little bit here, a little bit there. But hey, going into year 2, now he knows what the NFL's like. I'm sure he's working his ass off. By the way, cheap little plug, I'm going to be hooking up with him next Saturday at Mafia Con. I'll be there, but I'll be talking about that on the show next week. But anyway, yes, so he's got a lot of upside for sure. And even guys that I didn't mention, because they're not necessarily the young guys anymore, but like they lost leadership, but they also got guys who are plenty ready to be in that role. Guys like Teron Johnson, guys like Ed Oliver, guys like Deion Dawkins, DeQuan Jones, he's been around for a long time. It's not like they're going to be lacking voices. Rasul Douglas, you know what I mean? Veterans in that locker room. So for sure, I think the ascending youth being on the rise is a very big reason to think things are going to bode well for the Bills. Another one, kind of hit on it a little bit just now, but I don't think the pass catchy room is as bad as most people think. And that's not me saying, I want to be clear. You lose Stefon Diggs, you lose Gabe Davis. Those are big blows. But you can make a fair argument that, hey, Joe Brady has a whole offseason now to kind of figure out what this offense is, what he wants his offense to be. And remember, he came into this role halfway through the season. Sure, he's got a plan. And we saw a different offense last year. Well, Stefon Diggs' role was quite different when Joe Brady took over. So you don't have that one alpha like you had in Stefon Diggs. So no one player is replacing him. I know that. But I think collectively this unit can be fine. We talked about Khalil Shakir. Last year, over the last 10 games, he had 462 yards on 37 targets. I had a brain fart for a second. Stefon Diggs had 422 yards on 80 targets, more than double during that same span. Dalton Kincaid last year, explosive plays, nah, not really. But you could see him getting more and more comfortable each week. 73 catches, 91 targets, 673 yards as a rookie. Dawson Knox, banged up, didn't do shit last year. It seemed like they really struggled to figure out how to use their 12 personnel best. But man, 2 years ago, 48 catches. Year before that, 49 catches. Curtis Samuel had 600 some yards with Washington last year. Best year he had in 2020. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator, still young, a good player who should be a really, really good fit for Josh Allen. I don't think we talk about that enough. You're going to get something from Keon Coleman. You very well might get something from MVS. Hell, maybe even Matt Collins. And again, with Brady having a full offseason, back to my point here, buddy. They're not replacing Stefon Diggs And this is not a top 5, man, a top 10 pass catching room, but I think it's better than people think. And they can win with this group.
Yeah, I'm half in and half out on this one. It depends on the day. Like you said, you're not,
True.
and you won't. There's no Stefon Diggs in this locker room. There's not going to be a Stefon Diggs in this locker room this season, in my opinion. But I think this locker room, this pass catching room, is deeper than it was last year. You just don't have an alpha, and that can work in your benefit depending on how you play this season out. I mean, I'm looking at this room and I don't know why. Maybe this is just in my name. I have no idea. I keep forgetting Curtis Samuel's even in this locker room. I don't know if it's because we're just not talking about it. Maybe I'm not talking about him enough, but I look at this locker room and then I'm going, oh yeah, Curtis Samuel's still here. And then I get slightly more excited about it. I'm like, Coleman, maybe because he's more of the veteran in the locker room that I'm not talking about him and the role that he's going to be playing. I have no idea. But as the season's getting closer and closer, I do find myself questioning if this can truly work. Like, as we're getting closer to training camp and as preseason starting up, I'm like, can they actually pull this off without like an alpha there? Because they've done it in the past. Like John Brown was an alpha. Cole Beasley wasn't an alpha, but they helped Josh Allen take that next step. But I think with a full offseason under Joe Brady's belt, he's not coming into taking over what the previous regime of Ken Dorsey had built. He's had a whole offseason and can kind of build it how he wants. I think this is going to be another full regular offseason for Dalton Kincaid. As a rookie, you're trying to learn stuff. You got to go through rookie mini camp and all that kind of stuff. Now it's a full regular offseason with the playbook, with some experience under your belt. Khalil Shakir coming in and knowing that he's going to have a bigger role than he had last year. He didn't really know, okay, am I going to be third fiddle, fourth fiddle, fifth fiddle? What am I going to be? He's going to know that you need to step up and the passes are going to come to you because there's an opening there. Claypool, MVS, this could be their possible last chance in the NFL to make some type of noise. If they don't do anything or Claypool messes up again, he's out of the NFL. If this could be MVS's last role because he did slow down in Kansas City. This room might not be the top tier. I think they're in the middle of the pack, but I do think you got a bunch of guys who are going to be putting up wide receiver 2 numbers, which is something that you missed drastically last year. You just don't have an alpha. But if you're able to spread that amongst 3 or 4 different players, I think this can technically work.
Right now I would say if you're to power rank pass catchers for all 32 teams in the NFL, you probably would have the Bills mid-20s right now, I would say. Definitely lower, they're not even middle of the pack. Understandably so on paper in July. If this could be a unit that finishes 15, anywhere in the top half, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. And not even talking about James Cook, who could be more of a weapon out of the backfield than he's been if he doesn't drop touchdowns. I like Ray Davis a lot. I like Mac Hollins. Look, losing Stefon Diggs hurts. No question about that. But in some ways, the unit could get better because of their unpredictability, their balance, lots of reasons. You mentioned Curtis Samuel. And I think, another reason why it might be is because he came so early. Like, so much shit happened at this position after they signed Curtis Samuel. After they signed Curtis Samuel, then they trade Stefon Diggs. Then they draft Keon Coleman after they didn't move up for whoever was going to move up. All the talk about trading for a Higgins or an Ayuk, all that went through. Then Claypool, then MVS. So it's easy to kind of forget a little bit about Curtis Samuel, which kind of gets me thinking. Like last year, I mean, we would agree on this. I didn't see that coming. That was definitely Terrell Bernard, last year. Might not on the same scale because Terrell Bernard came out of nowhere, almost like Cinderella fashion. I wouldn't call Curtis Samuel having a big year, like a Cinderella story. But this time next year, we could be talking about, we were so worried about wide receiver. Curtis Samuel went off and 1,000 yards receiving and another 300 yards rushing or some shit like that. He's got that in him. He's got that dog in him. He's got that ability in him for sure.
Yeah, I agree with the role that I'm at least anticipating. I think a lot of other fans are anticipating. He could have that like Debo-esque type of role where you never know where he's going to be lined up in that offense. And I think that also is going to help Josh Allen a bit because if you're moving him all over, you're shifting the defense. He's going to be able to figure out, okay, this is the line. This is the set that the defense is in. I'm going to be able to go in this position just because of how smart Josh Allen has become in this league and how studly he's become, I think having a guy like a Curtis Samuel that's moving around the offense pre-snap all the time, that can benefit the offense, and not just Josh Allen, it can benefit other players too, because it's going to confuse the heck out of the defense.
For sure. And look, there's other smaller scale things about the Bills that I think could bode well. You could talk about like maybe they're better at defensive tackle. The depth might be better now. Maybe the running room or the running back room is going to be a little bit better because Latavius Murray had nothing left to give. And, they brought Ty Johnson back. They got Ray Davis, but those are smaller scale ones. Here's the other two. And these aren't really directly having anything to do with the Buffalo Bills. One of them, and again, I know we're coming off as homers here, but I'm just being dead honest. I would not have, even if I'm a Jets fan, I ain't got no faith left in Aaron Rodgers at this point. Dude's 40 years old. He's turning 41 this season at the beginning of December, coming off an Achilles. I've yet to see one camp video or highlight or whatever where he looks completely close to comfortable. I think it's very feasible your boy could be cooked at this point. Played 4 snaps last year. And let's not forget, by the way, the year before in Green Bay in 2022, pretty pedestrian. Like not even 3,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. They got question marks at OT, 2 veterans that are long in the tooth. Can they protect them? And after Garrett Wilson, I don't think their receiving room is all that great. They got the alpha like the Bills did in Diggs, but their depth at receiver doesn't impress me much. So what could bode well for Buffalo is I legitimately think there's a good chance that Aaron Rodgers might be cooked. And as good as the Jets roster might mostly be, especially on defense, Tyrod Taylor might have to be the guy who navigates that team. So that bodes well for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, to tie that into the thought process as Reed's running around the background, if you can hear.
I love it, man.
My wife just got home, so he's going a little crazy. But I think Green Bay has been known to be very good talent evaluators when it's time to move on. And I know the situation between Rodgers and Green Bay was already toxic, but I think you saw it with Favre. Maybe they moved a year or two too early for him, but he had Rodgers waiting a wing. That seems like the same case with Jordan Love. And it seems like, hey, your time has passed. It's time to move to the next generation here. It seems like it's a pressure cooker over there ready to explode. It's so toxic in that room. The general manager and head coach are one bad season away from being fired. Rodgers is, doing politics and podcasts everywhere. If you want to talk about a player that's not focused on football, take the attention away from Josh Allen and put it on Aaron Rodgers here. But I think he will be better than what we saw out of that locker room last year. It has to be, because that offense couldn't run through Zach Wilson and whoever else they threw out there. But it's that one string of losses here where you stack 2 or 3 losses in that locker room, it could completely explode, unravel. And you could go from a team that some people around the country are picking to go 10-7, 11-6 and compete for the division, to a 5-12 season, a 6-11 season, something like that, and be in the running for one of the top picks in the draft again. It's just, I think the offense will run better with Aaron Rodgers behind center. I just don't think it's going to be good enough to compete for a division title.
Let me give you a real quick Aaron Rodgers story on one of the many reasons why I personally hate the dude. Okay. Now, we live in Buffalo. This is Bills country. You'll get a fan here and there who grew up somewhere else, or for whatever reason, they hate the Bills and they like another team. Very rare, though. This is Bills country, Bills mafia, whatever you want to call it. All right. For 5 years, 2016 to 2021, I lived in Florida, and I had a very large group of friends, and probably 20 teams were represented with fans who would wear the jerseys. We'd all go out, a big group, 40 of us, would go to bars or play in these volleyball leagues and stuff like that. Everybody was a fan of a different team. It's nothing like Buffalo, Florida, transplant state. Everyone's fans of different teams. Anyway, I had a lot of Bills friends down there, but I would say the team that probably was second most well represented was actually, believe it or not, the Green Bay Packers. Lots of Green Bay Packer fans, at least among the people that I knew in Florida. So I watched Green Bay more often because I would have watch parties with these people. Plus, I just love football anyway. But I'm telling you, even when it was like MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers, he's a finger pointer. Quick to blame his teammates, quick to blame the coach, quick to put the finger at almost everyone except himself. That last year in Green Bay, 2022, man, it was awful. That's kind of what made me really hate him. Then all the other stuff, the off the field stuff, his philosophies towards things, the interviews, politic bullshit, all that stuff just added to it. He's a finger pointer. And I'm telling you, to your point, if the Jets struggle, it's not going to be his fault. Not according to Aaron Rodgers. It ain't going to be his fault. That could be a spiral. That is one thing I love about the Buffalo Bills. That coach, Sean McDermott, that locker room, the quarterback, Josh Allen ain't never going to point the finger at anyone except himself. Aaron Rodgers ain't that dude. And he's 40, going on 41, coming off a major injury. Again, that is a lot. And I mean a lot of eggs to put in one basket if you're a New York Jets fan, because they're a good team. I'm going to take that away from them. I don't trust his ass.
It was even crazy thinking how much investment they put in him last year, and 4 snaps in he's done for the year. But you got a world-class talent like Garrett Wilson, and you got a studly running back like Breece Hall. You're going to be wasting those rookie years on a guy who's in his twilight years trying to keep his name in there. Between him and Tom Brady, they need their name in the papers and in the media and on the mainstream media nonstop. If they string 2 or 3 losses, if they start the season 2-5, I'm just going to sit back, relax, and watch all those headlines roll in of, it's so-and-so's fault. The head coach is on the line. Nathaniel Hackett can't call an offense. It's going to be fun to watch it implode if they start 2-5, 2-6, something like that.
Absolutely. And here's the last thing that I think bodes well for the Buffalo Bills, at least the nice thing we're going to talk about today. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins. And look, the Buffalo Bills know firsthand. We've seen it with Von Miller. We've seen it with Trey White twice. You know what it's like with major injuries and guys try to come back. It takes time. And Miami's got not one, but 2 great bookend defensive ends coming off major injuries. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb. That's going to be a problem if you're a Miami Dolphins fan. They're long in the tooth in the secondary, including Jordan Poyer, at least on paper right now, your starting safety. We've seen signs of him slowing down firsthand last year. Those are issues with Miami. Tua destroys the Denver Broncos of the world in October. He's unbeatable against teams like that. We've seen now for a couple years when things get tight late in the season, we see what we see from Tua, not to mention the injury risk. But here's what I think bodes most well for Buffalo or worse for Miami, depending on how you're looking at it. If they're in a dogfight and it's, going into the last 5 to 6 games, you look at the Miami Dolphins schedule, that bodes well for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you're talking, here's their last 6 games. At Green Bay Packers, Green Bay should very well be expected to contend in the NFC next year. The New York Jets, who we just got buried a couple minutes ago, but they're still the New York Jets with a really good defense. And if Aaron Rodgers does stay healthy, and I'm wrong, they're a dangerous team. They're a dangerous team regardless. So they're playing the Jets. Then they are at Houston. Then they are at home against the San Francisco 49ers. So by the way, the Bills play, Houston and San Francisco too, but earlier. So anyway, Frisco at home. And then their last 2 games at Cleveland and at the New York Jets. Those are tough games for those 6 on the road, and even the 2 home games. Like I said, one of them against Frisco, some cold weather games for the Miami Dolphins, Cleveland, the Jets, the Green Bay. That schedule was not friendly to the Miami Dolphins. And that, my friends, I think bodes well for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much also saying if you play fantasy football, don't draft any Miami Dolphins because the playoff stretch is not going to be very friendly for you. But yeah, I mean, Tua's great at getting the ball to the playmakers, but Hill's another year older. You got Mostert, who's not going to repeat what he did last year. Achane is super talented, but undersized running backs like that don't last very long in the NFL, and he's already showing that he has issues staying healthy. Plus, Josh Allen has their number. If you want to add all that stuff into it, you just mentioned it, the 6 games at the end of the season. If you're Miami, you got to come out with a 2 or 3 game lead going into those final ones, and hopefully you can steal 2 or 3 of those games. You can't play even with Buffalo midway through the season. You have to be ahead of them and hope Buffalo struggles on the end stretch, because otherwise it's going to be another collapse Miami. And we kind of saw a little bit of that last year as well. But honestly, even besides that, until Miami proves that they can beat Buffalo and even hang with them, they're just not a true threat to me. Like Josh Allen embarrasses them time and time again. He just seems to have their number. They're not even as big of a threat as the Jets have been to the Buffalo Bills. So all that combined with the 6-game death match that you have at the end of the schedule, they have to be at least 2 or 3 games ahead of Buffalo and hope Buffalo struggles at the beginning of the season to stand a chance in that division. Otherwise, you're kind of just, hey, can we play 500 ball against these last 6 teams here and hope Buffalo plays 500 ball with us? Because that Houston is going to be crazy with their improved defense as well, how much money they spend on that back end. San Francisco is always going to be a threat. Even though we bash the Jets, their defense is always really, really good. On top of all the other players that you're going to, or teams that you mentioned, that back half of Miami is definitely going to be a big struggle for them and a big benefit for Buffalo.
All right, a real quick break here to let you know, hey, golf fans, and I know there's plenty of you out there watching and listening right now, want to let you know that whether you're a beginner that's brand new to the sport, trying to truly learn the game, or even if you're a regular fixture on the course, looking to get your game up to that next level by getting lessons, I'm here to tell you right now that the teaching pro you need in your life is definitely Jeff Metis, an award-winning PGA professional. Jeff has been helping golfers of all skill levels get the very most of their ability for nearly 3 decades. Jeff is also a well-known voice of golf off the course as well, as co-host of the Tee to Green Show on WGR 550 alongside Brian Cozio. Lessons with Jeff Metis will drastically change your game for the better. Trust me, I am seeing it right now firsthand. Visit www.mygolfdojo.com to book your lessons with Jeff Metis today. Gotta tell you, man, I like talking about the Bills in this manner. This is more fun than being a pessimist right now. I know some people are going to call us a homer. And look, the Miami Dolphins are a very good football team. They are capable of winning the AFC East this year. The New York Jets are a good football team, and they are capable of winning the AFC East this year. I just feel really good about the Bills right now. I've gotten myself to a place where I feel real good about them, and I think there's lots of factors that bode well for them. Kind of want to transition before we get out of here, spend a couple minutes on money. I don't know if this summer is bode well for the Buffalo Sabres or not, but we haven't talked since they've made we'll call them a slew of moves. We're not going to go through them all because they're kind of old news, but kind of lump them all together. Like, what are your thoughts right now in terms of what you think they've done this offseason and how it might shape what will be a Lindy Ruff coach team? We got to remember that too. This is a different coach, different style and everything, but these additions, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the last time we were did the buy sell about the draft pick, and I lost that one because I sold it and they moved back 3 picks. Whoop-de-doo. I've absolutely loved this offseason. I guess I'm going to be a full-time Buffalo homer of the show. I haven't always been, so go listen to some of the previous episodes. It's not always the case, but they seem to have nailed the draft. Now, I'm not a draft expert. I leave that to the people that actually do that for a living. Same with the NFL. I don't do that. That's not what my expertise is. So I'm not going to even pretend. But everything that I'm seeing, they nailed the draft. Everybody loved the draft they did. That's awesome. I think they've addressed and what appears to be fixed their bottom 6. I loved it. Lafferty, Malenstein, and Kubel. I think that's going to be a very fast, hard-hitting, not fun for other teams to play against fourth line. I love the move to bring in the depth scorer like Zucker. I was a big fan of them trading for McLeod because, one, it showed that Kevin Adams is not afraid to trade some of his prize prospects that he covets and doesn't want to move. And I think it helps with the overall. I think the whole offseason has fixed the depth scoring that wasn't there last year with the Oposos and Olafson's not scoring and Gergenson's running the same fourth line and Peyton Krebs and so on and so forth. I think it's going to be very fun watching this bottom 6, especially under a Lindy Ruff coach offense, because you know that bottom 6 is going to get the minutes, not top 6 minutes, but they're going to get the minutes. And McLeod's going to get those big time important faceoffs near the end of the game when you're trying to clinch the game, the win. If it wasn't for the 13-year drought, though, I would love this offseason. I would have no complaints. But you had a piss poor season last year, and I think again, if you didn't have this big time drought and that bad season last year, I think you would have crowned the Buffalo Sabres winners of the offseason. But, the job's not done yet, but I will say that coming from where we did at the end of last season, I really like all the moves they've made so far. They've not done yet, but I really, really like all the pieces they brought in, the style of hockey that I'm hoping and planning for them to play next year.
I'll say this too, Lindy Ruff being the coach, and sometimes it's easy to forget that. It does matter. It's not Don Granato, and that's not a shot at Don Granato. That's not even saying Lindy Ruff is for sure going to be better than Granato was. What that's saying is that he wants specific types of players, and it might not be eye candy to the casual fan. That's for sure. I got to say this too. I've been railing on Kevin Adams so much, but when that trade happened and they traded Savoy, I got to the point where, like, even I feel sorry for this man. I'm like, make a trade. Got all these prospects. Make a trade. Then they make a trade. Oh, not that trade. That's not the trade I wanted. Doesn't work that way, man. This is a team, winning matters. And when you're not making the playoffs in 13 years, people ain't waiving that no trade clause to come here. So you're not going to get maybe the guy that you really, really wanted when you're dangling a Savoy. I like that trade. And usually I knee-jerk react to the Sabres negatively. And then over time, and smarter hockey people than me will say, oh, this is a pretty good move. Here's why. I'm like, all right, I get on board with that. But even in the moment, I didn't hate that trade. First of all, they got a pretty good third-line center who's got, a lot of playoff experience now, just went and scored a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals. They're trying to replace Casey Middlestat. They're going to lose a little bit offensively, but they're going to be hopefully a little bit better on defense. Guy can win draws, play defense in his own zone, stuff like that. I agree with you, man. I'm for the most part positive about this offseason. I think it was important to improve the bottom six. I don't think they raised the bar, though, if I'm being honest, much offensively. Like maybe Zucker. He's the only guy who's ever even had, like 20 goals in a season of anybody they've signed. So I still say at the end of the day, it's Tage and Tuck, and Cousins, Peterka, and Quinn. They're counting on their core, those five guys, and whether it's Benson and Kulik, maybe Zucker, whatever, to step up and be better. That's how they're going to be better offensively, like they were 2 years ago. You still think, you said they weren't, you give me an indication that you don't think they're done. You think they're not done? You think a top six forward is still on its way? I don't. I think they're done. Maybe I'm wrong. I could easily be wrong.
I think they're done. I don't think they can be done. I'll put it like that, where they need to get a top six forward. Like, I think you said it perfectly. As much as they've improved, I don't think they're a playoff team right now. Like, they haven't touched their top six, and they're just the same as last year. And that was one of the criticisms and concerns that we went into going into last season. You're banking on guys to have career years once again and repeat what they just did the prior year. Now, I get the power play cannot be as bad as it was last year. It's near impossible. Matt Ellis is off the bench, thank God, and he's nowhere near the power play. So and I'm not just blaming him. The whole power play was terrible to begin with. But it has to get better, right? Like, it can't be as bad as it was last year. So there's a bit of scoring. I don't think Tage Thompson, fingers crossed, he's going to be hurt. Miss a lot of games like he did this year. I think Tuck was out a bit. You had Quinn, who missed the majority of the season. But and hopefully Cousins bounce back and Peterka stays where he is. But that's banking on a lot of things.
It is,
once again. And I will hand it to Kevin Adams. Like you said, he pretty much gets crucified whether he does or doesn't make the trade. And I love the trade. It says one or two things. One, either the value of Matt Savoy around the league wasn't as high as it was in Buffalo, or two, teams know that Kevin Adams heads in the firing squad right now, and that if he doesn't make a trade, he's fired. So they're going to try to take advantage of him. And, I don't know if he makes that trade if Helenius doesn't fall to him, because you take Helenius, you just replace him where Savoy was. It cancels each other out, and you added a third line center that improves. And now maybe you can actually finally go and trade Peyton Krebs to somebody that still values him. But no, they can't be done and not touch this top six. They can't just say, okay, we'll put Zucker in where Skinner was, and hopefully with Quinn back, everything's fixed up. No, it can't happen. I don't care what you have to do. And I get it. Not many top six players, if any, have been moved this whole offseason. I get it. But if there's a team in the league that has the pieces to pull off a deal like this, and there's plenty of teams out there that don't have players that have no movement clauses, there's plenty of players out there that don't have a choice, they have to go get one. Because if not, you're going to be fighting for that one or two spots in the Eastern Conference, trying to sneak in. And I just don't know if they have the firepower to do it unless all these players have another career year, UPL continues to be great, and your bottom six is truly fixed.
Let me ask you this. First of all, I should take another break, and I should take off this Josh Allen jersey, and maybe I'll go put on a Buffalo Sabres jersey to do this last few minutes of the show here, because I feel like I'm just being really upbeat here for some reason, even about the Buffalo Sabres. I kind of wish I could be a fly on the wall of Kevin Adams and Terry Bagula and Lenny Ruff's, that office where they're talking, because I feel like in my mind, what they're saying is, all right, we're getting a better bottom six. We are redoing the bottom six, and we're relying on our guys to be better on the top six, which, if you go back 2 years ago, man, look, Tage Thompson was on fire 2 years ago. Quinn was great. Dylan Cousins was way better 2 years ago than he was last year. I still, from what I've heard, that fight that he got into early in the year kind of really affected his season. But anyway, Quinn, Alex Tuck, you said it. He was better 2 years ago than he was last year. And who's the other guy? Oh, Paterka. He really came on last year. You hope he could build on that. And that's not even counting like a Zach Benson or Zucker. So I think they have more confidence than we do right now to say that their front top six can be good. Let me ask you this, because I put some on Twitter. I agree. And by the way, so we're clear, please go give me a top six forward. I want one. I ain't saying I don't want one. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I did put on Twitter, and I took a beating for this, actually. I said, Sabres still need a top six forward. If you were to offer Peyton Krebs, then I said, like, Noah Ostlund and a pick, that should get it done. Overwhelmingly, the response was, what kind of drugs are you taking? That's not happening. And somebody who wasn't being offensive, because that shit rolls off my shoulder. I don't pay any attention. But somebody said, well, you know what, Pat? Would you do that? Would you make that trade if it was for Alex Tuck? Would you trade Alex Tuck for Krebs, Ostlund, and a draft pick? And I said, no, I wouldn't, because Tuck's a pretty decent top six forward. And he's only a pretty decent one. He's not a great one. What do you think? So we both want a top six guy. Realistically, in your mind, what would you be willing to give up to get a top six, like a bona fide, not even bona fide, but a good, solid, an Alex Tuck type top six forward? What would you be willing to give up?
Well, the first overall pick or first round pick next year is definitely on the table, because
Sure.
if you're Kevin Adams, how are you not sitting there going, especially in the draft? And I know even they just said, like, hey, he's trying to move the pick. Nobody wants to bite. None of these players that you drafted, if you don't make the playoffs this year, you're going to see through. And I think I said it on our show, all those players that they drafted, the next GM is absolutely going to love them.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
But there shouldn't be anybody off the table. Like, I think Tage you keep, Dahlin you keep, and Power you keep. Everybody else should be movable. Even if you want to toss in Paterka and Quinn, sure. But like any of the prospects down there, you don't know if they're going to pan out. Like, you built up this I'm not saying go Tim Murray here, but you built up the Rochester prospect system to do these type of things to help your NHL team. None of those prospects down there should be off limits. If you got to move Rosine, Kulik, Ostlund, whoever else down there that you have to move to piece together, you should be able to do it. But if Krebs is like the second or third piece in there, on top of the first round pick next year, and one of these big time prospects that everybody raves about, that should net you a number one or a top six forward. Even if you want to keep Paterka on the top line, if you find a partner for Quinn and Cousins, that bumps everybody down. It bumps Benson down. It bumps Zucker down. You're going to have a better top six if you find a top six, because it forces all the other wingers down. And then maybe you can scratch a Kubel. Maybe you can scratch a Malestein and bring them up to that. Then your 13th forward's better, and they can fill in that fourth line if have to. But yeah, it's nothing should be off limits down in Rochester in your prospect system, because it's win now or you're fired. Like it's that simple.
I was going to say, I think how willing or how crazy, how nutty he'll get to go dive in the deep end of the pool might come down to how much he believes that if this team misses the playoffs again, he's getting fired.
Right.
That's probably what it comes down to. And I want them to do it. I just don't think they're going to. I really don't. I want to end with, I have 2 quick points to make. Number one, I mentioned Peyton Krebs. Fascinated to see how things play out with him. He ain't your third line center no more. Earlier, a couple of weeks ago, Peyton Krebs, maybe he's your third line center. Well, that ain't happening. He ain't your third line center. Is he going to play wing on the third line? Is he going to play center or wing on the fourth line? Is he going to be a trade piece at this point? Is he going to be the 13th forward? All that shit's on the table. So I'm really fascinated to see how things play out. And then one other last thing here. Low-key signing, but they signed a goalie, James Reimer. 1 year, $1 million. It's a one-way contract, so he can still go to Rochester. The only difference is he's going to get paid whether he plays in Rochester or Buffalo. Ideally, he's in Rochester. He's your third goalie, your backup. But I think he could push Devin Levi, and I think that's Lindy Ruff's way of saying, we're not just going to give you a job here in the NHL as a backup. He might want Levi to play more in Rochester like they kind of did with Ryan Miller many, many years ago. That could be the case. I don't think it's a given that James Reimer is the Rochester goalie and Devin Levi is the number 2. It's likely, but I'm not going to go as far to say that I think it's a given.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it's how much are you going to push UPL? And, he didn't play, I think, the first 9 games of last season. If you even put in 6 of those games, he's close to 60 games played on last year. And I understand that's a different coaching staff, but he showed that he could do it. Sure. Does Lindy Ruff want to have a goalie crease like that? And if he does, if you want to have UPL play 50, 55, 60 games, it does Levi no good to sit behind him. Send him down to Rochester. And I know James Reimer is not the best backup. He's one of the lower tier ones that you were able to sign to back up UPL here. But you give him a handful of games, call up Levi to, play in some of those games that you don't want Reimer to do. I think it would benefit, if that's the way they're going with UPL, it would benefit Levi to play more games in Rochester, because I don't even think he's reached 30 games down in Rochester played yet. I think it would benefit him and his experience and his progression in his career if he plays more games down there rather than be the backup here and just sitting behind UPL. And again, hopefully UPL continues what he did last year. I'm not fully bought in. I think Phil keeps asking, when am I fully bought in? If he's playing the same way he did last year into January, I'll fully buy in. But he's looking to get paid a bit in RFA as well.
I'm thinking in my mind too, if you're James Reimer, you're 35, 36 years old, you probably did not have a lot of options if you took a 1-year deal to come to the Buffalo Sabres in free agency willingly with not 1, but 2 pretty damn good young goalies. Yeah, I guess best case for him, that's, the whole Devin Levi go to Rochester thing. That's probably the only real good scenario for him. But I'm like, yeah, his options must not have been plentiful for him to wind down in Buffalo. But anyway, that notwithstanding, I'm not going to let that last comment take away from the vibe here of this episode. This was fun. Talked a lot of positivity with the Sabres to some extent, especially the Buffalo Bills, because I do think at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that bode well for them. This was a good chat. Make sure, guys, if you're not already, follow PK on Twitter at PK_BSC. Check out the Buffalo Sports Collective. Great show. PK, along with his partner, Phil, they crush it there. Bills, Sabres, especially, of course, Buffalo Bandits. Always a pleasure having you out, buddy. Appreciate you very much, man.
No problem. I'm going to go keep my positivity into the weekend.
Speaking of, have a good weekend, everybody. I'll be back. Brand new episode starting on Monday.